Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, pause this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. In the context of this podcast, everybody refers to us and our cat. You are free to feel however you want about Rand, who is a fictional character. Don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
You know what was like fucked up that I learned today?
I'm afraid, but yeah. Okay.
Within like the United States tax law governing private foundations, and like because like private foundations holdings like exist outside their like non-taxable income because their purpose is to like go to tax deductible gifts, you know? But those private foundations only have to spend 5% of their like monetary holdings each year, and that includes in grants or administrative expenses. So like they could just be theoretically paying their trustees like $100,000 a year to sit on the board of a private foundation and not actually be spending any money on philanthropy. So doesn't that fucking suck?
I knew most of those words, but I didn't... Can you say it again, but make it dumber for me? I didn't really understand.
Of course.
Once taxes get involved, it gets really hard for me.
Well, taxes, like, American taxes are extremely confusing anyway because
It's
the
all
IRS.
a lie. It's just whatever the IRS wants, you have to give them. I don't understand it.
Do you know that if you call the IRS, all the employees use pseudonyms because people are so mean to them that they don't want
That's so sad.
people attacking the IRS employees?
It's like how in Watchmen all the cops
Yeah.
have to wear
It's like fucking insane. The IRS employees have to have superhero aliases.
I think tax collector is the funniest job that has existed and has been universally despised for forever. Because it's like the universal, like, don't kill the messenger. Like, if we're going to kill someone, people, we need to kill the king who's levying the taxes. The capitalist elite, not the IRS employees who are no doubt blue-collar workers like you and me.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, anyway, back to...
the way it works, this is an oversimplification, obviously, but
that's what I need.
The way that it works in the United States is that all of your income or, you know, various monetary holdings are taxable by the United States government, you know, social contract, etc., etc. And the way that philanthropy works in the United States is that you can make tax-deductible donations to organizations that are classified as 501c3 nonprofits. That's an IRS classification, which means that you are a not-for-profit organization. You are doing some sort of social service in the community. And therefore, you're not making income, you're making revenue, which is an important distinction. Like, if you think back to, like, the big robber barons, like John D. Rockefeller and all those people who set up these huge foundations, that's where we got this history of having these massive foundations in the United States. Like, I was just reading that private foundations in the United States hold something like $600 billion, or just, like, crazy amounts of money. But because those piles of money exist within these private foundations, they are technically outside of taxable money. Like, they cannot be taxed because they exist within this private foundation in order to be used for philanthropic things. So, like, ideally it's like, we're not going to tax that money because in a perfect world, the Rockefeller Foundation or whatever is going to give $1 billion in grants to grassroots organizations or nonprofits across the United States. But the laws governing these foundations only require that they spend 5% of whatever their holdings are each year. Like, they only have to spend 5%. They don't have to spend any more of that if they don't want to. And that includes grants that they give out and administrative expenses. So say you have a foundation that has like $100,000 in holdings, so to speak. You only have to spend, what's 5% of $100,000? Like
50,000?
That's 50%.
Yeah. 5,000 was what I meant.
Oh, that was so funny.
I feel exactly as I did in my high school business law class when I learned not a thing because the girl sitting next to me was too cute.
Okay, so say you have like $100,000 in holding, you only have to spend 5,000 of that over a whole, fiscal year in order to meet your tax requirements. And so that means you could have 5 trustees on your board and pay each of them $5,000 and count that as administrative expenses and not actually have done a single ounce of philanthropic work.
Is that how the LDS Church gets away with hoarding all its money?
Probably. I'm reading this book that's talking about, like, this is the way that, people get away with hoarding all this money because they're paying trustees and people hundreds of $1,000s to sit on a board and basically do nothing and reject grant applications so that they don't have to actually spend any money. And then all the money that they're using to pay these people is not taxed because it exists in this private foundation realm. So, this is like such a very Sally's niche interest EHR opening, but it's just like really pissed me off.
What a depressing reality we live in. Tibble's biting me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's upsetting. What a great way. What a great start to the episode about Matt dying.
Well,
which is the main
Matt
point.
would also probably hurt his wealth.
I mean, he does.
Yeah.
Like, he just keeps it all in chests in his little
chests. Yeah,
chests.
Matt is a private foundation robber baron. It's just like really pissed me off.
Yeah.
And like there was like a huge push in Congress a few years back to be like, you have to do 5% in grants. And they were all like, oh no, we will simply run out of money.
Because everyone in Congress runs those organizations. Because they're all... I mean, I read textbooks for a living.
Yeah, she does. It's
I
pretty
edit
funny.
textbooks for a living. And it's so funny reading all of the, like, stuff about the Gilded Age, that's meant for 2nd and 3rd graders or whatever, that's like, here's what monopolies are. Monopolies are bad, and that's why we outlawed them or whatever. And I'm like, literally nothing that law means nothing. There are still, look around us. What do you think Amazon is?
Yeah, what do you think Disney is? What do you think Microsoft is? I was also reading in this book that, like, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is famous for providing vaccines in Africa, and their whole thing's like, we've saved 100,000 lives. But, like, the very international trade law that allows Microsoft to operate its monopoly also prevents vaccines, like basic vaccines and other medications, being shipped into Africa and being provided to the populace at, like, the basic healthcare human right level. So, like, you're not actually doing anything good. Like, you could just get rid of the monopoly and then healthcare would be fine.
Eat the rich.
Yeah. Anyway, eat the rich. Sorry, Matt Catham, that's the one point against you. He claims to hate the rich people, but Matt is a rich people.
No, it is interesting. Matt's progression from, I'm just a poor boy,
nobody loves me,
to, like, the wealthiest character in the series, but also, like, that wealth is so rarely... Janet just texted me, the Matt Damon twins?
Oh, from Teen Wolf. So sad that I knew immediately. I was like, yeah, the Matt Damon twins.
My friend Janet is watching Teen Wolf, which is really delightful for me personally. Although I still have to talk her out of watching the later seasons.
No, if I did it, she has to do it.
Oh, if you suffered, you absolutely 100% chose.
I know!
Against my advice.
And how else would I have seen the unsexy cowboys?
They were very unsexy. I can't. She says they're too awful.
They're
really bad.
Everyone is, and it's like, this is no shade. Nobody has to be attractive, but everyone's like, look at how hot they are, and I'm like, they are just two normal looking dudes.
Yeah, it is pretty upsetting in Teen Wolf how you get these guys who you're just like, you're attractive by nature of the fact that you have a six-pack, I guess. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, yes, they have what is considered to be an attractive male body mm-hmm. by 21st century gross standards.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, Dylan O'Brien is right there, never fetishized by the show, just being a totally lovely, normal looking.
Yeah, totally hot.
Although he did get a little bit jacked after he went to the Maze Runner.
Yeah. And, like, the outfits they put in him just made him look like he had the biggest shoulders in the whole world. I know. Because they were still trying to be like, this is Styles, and he dresses in clothes that are too big for him. And I'm like, you made this boy look like... just like his shoulders are so big.
I know.
And it's like nothing against it. It's just like a very funny costuming choice.
I'm just like fascinated by the idea that Teen Wolf is like, we're going to have our teen protagonists be shirtless, or if they're women, in their bras for 80% of the screen time or whatever, except for Dylan O'Brien.
Except for
Dylan O'Brien, we never see with his shirt off.
Yeah.
We never see him really in any state of undress.
Do you think that's in his contract?
I don't know.
Or they were just like, no.
Is the thing. Or if they were just like, we are emphasizing the fact that he is the normal, non-supernatural character.
Yeah.
By letting him, I don't know, have a normal teen body.
Yeah.
That we're not allowed to see because he's a normal teen.
It's weird, man.
Okay, this is Everybody Hates Rant. I don't know which parts of that intro are going to stay.
Sounds great. I can't wait.
Is it going to be the Teen Wolf fetishizing thing or the tax laws? Historically, probably the tax law. This is your friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Emily Jushaw.
I'm Sally Goodger.
Tybalt.
Doesn't hovering over
doesn't really have enough food to eat, but
we'll give it a shake-a-roo.
There you go, bud. Sad boy.
Tybalt won't eat if the food is not in the center of his bowl.
No, it's so ridiculous. I spend so much of my life shaking his bowl to make sure that the kibble is in the center where he can best access it. Stupid. Okay, we're on our penultimate section of the Fires of Heaven, which means that we are in the thick of climax zone. So we're picking up right where we left off, which is with Moiraine disappearing with Lanfear into Lan and Lanfear. Boy, it is tough. They're not usually near each other on screen until this very moment. So with Moiraine and Lanfear disappearing into the doorway, Rand just sort of stands there staring at it. And the doorway sort of erupts with, like, lightnings coming out of it. There's tons of smoke. I don't... Is it really resolved what happens to it? The next time we see it, if we ever see it again, it's, like, melted.
Yeah, Rand's like, it starts melting. I don't know.
Yeah, and all he can do is kind of, like, channel the smoke up, but it's just, like, no longer accessible. And I think later we find out specifically from Moiraine that this is due to the negative effects of both of them channeling while they're going through the doorway. You know, the Aelfin are really uptight about their rules. Yeah. And while you can get in with, what is it, music, instruments of iron, whatever, their other fire, their dreaded...
their weaknesses.
Their Achilles heels. You can get in with those, which is why they ask about them, but, like, you simply cannot channel inside there. So it fucks up the ter'angreal. And Rand is just kind of like, well, whoopsie, as Lan comes up and is like, aw, dunk. And Rand's like, you can't go after her, Lan. And Lan's like, I know. And just, like, pieces out.
Yeah, he's like, bye.
He just, like, turns around and walks away. And Rand's like...
Okay. Bye, Dad.
Okay, we'll continue this conversation later, I guess. Lanfear's bubble has come, or I guess Rand did that bubble. Mm-hmm. His bubble has come down so he can see Egg is sort of collapsed with Avienda and Matt. Matt is, like, fanning her with his hat, which is simply the funniest.
Yeah. It's like, sure.
Most useless thing I can think of. And probably exactly what I would do if someone had fainted and I had no medical expertise.
Yeah. You're like, are you hot?
What can I do? Is this helpful? Asmodean's like looking around for Lanfear.
Yeah, he's like, oh shit.
He's like, she's gonna come out, jump out from around a corner. I don't believe she's really gone.
Yeah, but...
Rand's like, what? Is she okay? Egg's like, I'm fine. I'm just dying. And it's like, Avienda, why are you up and about? And she's like, well, Lanfear had me just slightly less than she had Egg, which is like, she's like, that explains the difference. And I'm like, it doesn't really, though.
No, it doesn't.
Because, you know, from our point of view, Lanfear had them for the exact same amount of time. Mm-hmm. And also, like, I don't know. It just is a very, like, convenient plot excuse to get Egg out of the way, and I don't really know why, considering that Avienda herself immediately gets shoved out of the plot as soon as they get to Camelin. Mm-hmm. Whatever. But the wise ones come up and are like, she'll be fine. She just can't. She just has to rest for the next few days, essentially. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, Dunk. So they are helping Edwene and the wounded. And Rand is sort of trying to figure out, he's like going around, figuring out what's going on, what the status is. He's like, without Moiraine, no one can get healed. Because no one else who can channel can heal, because the Ale Wise Ones don't know how to heal, which is buck wild to me.
I know, I feel like that is the most useful skill that Aes Sedai have, and, like, nobody... Like, I mean, I know there's, like, a whole Aja where that's their thing, but, like, in terms of character count, the percentage of people who know how to heal well is way too low.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. Like, that would be the one thing I'm like, I'm going to learn everything about this because that's so useful.
Yeah, especially if you're living in fantasy land where people are getting stabbed all the time, you know?
Everyone's got diarrhea all the time or whatever.
Fucking...
Dysentery.
But yeah, typhoid.
Like,
diphtheria.
Everyone is getting stabbed.
I can name diseases.
Good job, Emily.
Those are just all the Oregon Trail diseases.
I mean, those are the danger ones.
Cholera.
Though, right? That's why everyone died on the Oregon Trail, because they got all the shitting diseases.
I mean, smallpox was the really big one. Did you hear they eliminated smallpox in Africa?
That's awesome.
Yeah, way to go. 2020! I forgot what I was saying about diseases. Yeah, like, I find it so aggravating when authors or whoever are like, we are in a fantasy world where people are getting stabbed constantly, and so we are giving people healing powers. Like, healing power is one of the magical powers. But, oh wait, that will totally eliminate the danger of people being stabbed. So now we have to put massive and usually sort of arbitrary limits on healing.
Yeah. It's very strange. And then Nynaeve just, like, can heal whatever. So it's like, but Nynaeve is never at the battles.
Yeah.
Especially in, like, the first half of the series. She's, like, never at the battles.
Yeah, she's never where she needs to be in terms of who needs healing.
So it's just very frustrating because it's like, you'd think the Ale Wise Ones growing up and living in such a militaristic society, like, they'd be like, this is great. We can do more fighting if we know how to do more healing.
Yeah, it's never explained how, like, healing could develop in one society and culture, but not in another one. Mm-hmm. Especially because the Ale are literally, like, descended from the servants of Aes Sedai, and Ruidain was built by, like, Aes Sedai, it is implied.
Yeah.
And so you'd think they would be like, hey, here's healing.
Yeah.
Pass this down for generations, please.
Listen, 2 different men invented calculus at the same time.
Yeah.
You think 2 different groups of people can't invent healing?
I assume the sea folk don't have healing either.
Yeah. It's one of those weird, it's like got a weird undertone of like, the Western world has modern medicine. But the rest of them don't.
I just think, like, it is reasonable to have some limits on medical aid, especially because... Excuse me, I have a popcorn kernel. Especially because we have limits on modern medicine in terms of who has money and who doesn't.
Yeah.
At least in America, I know that is not the case in most civilized societies. civilized is a loaded term in most developed countries.
Yeah, in most, I don't know, countries that care about other human beings.
Yeah.
It's not America.
Who cares? Another popcorn kernel. Just do popcorn. But, like, yeah, the sort of arbitrary, well, just some people can do it and some people can't is sort of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And sort of makes me feel like we're in this weird, like, Dungeons and Dragons rules zone where only the clerics can heal.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, then give people healing potions, you know?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you end up in a Dungeons and Dragons party where your healers refuse to heal.
Been there.
Yeah, currently there. And it's like, gotta have healing
die
potions.
in this motherfucker.
I can't die just because the bard is like, would rather shoot lightning than heal your stab wound. And I'm like, listen, I sort of get it. But also I do have a stab wound.
Yeah. But also Egg is bleeding out on the docks.
Yeah,
or whatever.
it's like,
and they're like, she'll just rest and she'll be fine.
she'll just rest and we'll bleed her with leeches.
Yeah, we have no idea what type of internal bleeding
Her
she
humors
has.
are out of whack.
Her womb is wandering.
So Rand sort of goes walking around and runs into Lan, where they have the single worst conversation that
my
two men have
God.
ever had. Lan's like, I'm off. Moiraine did something to me where my bond passed to a different Aes Sedai, so I have to go be with her now. And Rand's like, okay. And Lan's like, if you ever see Nynaeve, I need you to break up with her for me.
Rand's like, no.
Rand's like, no? And also you are fully like 50-something. Be a
man.
Do it your
Man.
fucking self.
Time to be a big boy now.
I mean, like, in the breakup scheme of things, having your mentee do it is like a step below breaking up with someone by text.
Like, I think it's actually the worst way you could possibly do it. Like, here's my teen boy.
Facebook Messenger is way up here in comparison to the boy I taught how to sword fight.
I was like, listen, Lan can't date you anymore.
Because
He's fucking some other lady.
He's sleeping with someone else now, and fuck you. Great.
This has been a great conversation.
I mean, Rand does say Nynaeve would not believe me,
Yeah.
simply, because Nynaeve has a brain
Yeah.
and knows that Lan has this murder complex.
Yeah.
I just wrote a whole blog about Lan and how much I hate him, and how much I hate the value that the plot places on him, and the sort of things that he says to Rand here, and how damaging they are to Rand, because Lan says, people like men like you and me are only ever going to bring suffering to women. So the best way to stop that is just to eliminate women from our lives. Which is like, what?
Yeah.
That logic is astounding.
Yeah. Like, I don't even know where to start. It really just doesn't make sense.
I mean, we've said it all
Yeah.
before, I think, but this is really like an encapsulation of Lan being like, here's my value system, which is becoming Rand's value system, although Rand also had the foundation in place, we are told, from his Mantheran upbringing, which is similar to the Borderlands.
Yeah.
But it sort of puts a system into place in this series where, although women are more present and are much greater participants than they are in many of the fantasy, like, installments, books, movies, whatever, prior to this series, they are still not allowed to be their own agents. They are still positioned inevitably as, like, emotional cruxes by which men turn.
Mm-hmm.
So, ultimately, by having, like, Lan isn't a character. Okay, well, this is a debate. I wouldn't say Lan is a character totally worth eliminating. Lan does bring a couple of things to the plot. Not a lot, but a couple of things. As an introduction to the warder system generally, as Moiraine's partner, he's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. But in terms of his value to Rand as a mentor, in terms of his relationship to Nynaeve as a lover, he is 100% useless because of this attitude he has toward women, and toward himself as a suicidal maniac.
Mm-hmm.
Literally this has been upsetting me for days, so I'm sorry if you already read about it in my blog, but here it goes. In A Memory of Light, Lan is charging to kill Demandred for no reason. It's the stupidest plot point. And he is like, I know what I'm doing is stupid and suicidal, but you never change the world if you're not stupid or suicidal.
What?
And I was like, what kind of Fast and Furious logic is
I
this?
live my life 1/4 mile.
Like, seriously, though. It is like, I was like, this is like something the fucking NCAA puts in a commercial. Yeah. Hey, men, break your bodies. Yeah. It's the only way you can contribute to the world. Yeah. Hey, men, kill yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, what a horrible message to send to men.
Yeah, I think it's especially, like, adds, like, a really toxic layer when we were thinking about, like, Rand in terms of mental illness and, like, how Lana's just, like, constantly telling Rand, like, there's no point to your life. You are ultimately going to die, and you are ultimately going to choose when to kill yourself by your actions.
And you're
so
ultimately going to hurt everyone around you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, what are you saying?
So, thesis, Lan almost blew up the world.
Yeah.
Indirectly, like, but...
I'm gonna really fuck up our Dragon Reborn just, like, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah, the toxicity is, like, through the roof.
It is carcinogenic.
Because, yeah, like, imagine you're a savior figure and you are told by your mentor figure, you're going to die. Not only is there no hope, you're going to die, mm-hmm. but it's also going to fuck up everyone you allow to get close to you.
Yeah.
And, like, even though that is, in some sense, a reality, like, of course, if you die young, if you die at all, people close to you are going to mourn you.
Yeah, of course.
But there's also, like, much to be said about dying with dignity, about dying in a way that you choose.
Yeah.
It's just, like, there's also power to life, Lan.
Yeah, and it's, like, just because Ran is more, like, 99% running towards death as he runs towards Armageddon, mm-hmm. doesn't mean that his life isn't meaningful right now while he's alive, and that he can't be, like, have good, positive relationships with people without, like, dragging everybody down by being like, I'm gonna die, so there's no point in me putting time and effort into our relationship.
I know, like, sharp contrast with another thing we've been watching recently, which is Avatar: The Last Airbender, mm-hmm. where you have a savior figure who is full of joy and vitality, which I know it's, like, a kid's show, like, I get that, but it's also, like, so much of Aang's story is rendered meaningful by the fact that he has relationships with people and is looking for happiness and is looking for meaning.
Yeah.
And Rand is just like, everything sucks. And I'm the worst.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll destroy the world. And it's like, yeah, if that's your perspective, dude.
Yeah, I had never really framed Avatar like that, but I think in that way it's, like, a really bold and sexy take of Avatar, because you think of all of our savior figures, and even, like, I know Frodo is going through his whole, like, extreme PTSD thing, so, like, that's kind of a more nuanced story, but even Frodo is like,
Yeah, Frodo, especially by the end there, it's just like, nah.
And Sam has to be like, okay, let's take our Zoloft, climb up the mountain. So, yeah, it's just, like, it's just so... it's, like, so toxic, this, like, nuclear waste conversation between the two of them. And it's so sad because it's, like, less than a page in length, really.
Yeah.
And it's, like, the whole rest of everything is Rand being like, women.
Yeah, and just the troubling thing is that it could exist if the narrative at all condemned it. And I was reading something interesting today about, like, we shouldn't be so quick to condemn authors or narratives for presenting morally gray characters or characters that you don't agree with or ideologies that you don't agree with.
Yeah.
And not, like, going out of their way to be like, this is the bad one.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with The Wheel of Time is that it makes concepts like these, like that Rand and Lan are embodying, so central to the plot and to the salvation of the world that there's no other message to take away from it than this is fine.
Yeah.
or this is normal, or this is good.
Yeah, and I also think, well, I agree with that, like, ultimately, like, it's, literature exists not, like, it shouldn't just be everything you agree with all the time. But, like, I also think there's an argument to be made about, like, if something that you're writing has such, like, a toxic result in the world, like, thinking about, like, the impact it has on female readers or young male readers to be, like, women must be put on pedestals. Like, I think there needs to be room for, like, criticism like that, because exactly, the Wheel of Time is like, there's really nothing else to take from this than that women do not have agency.
Yeah, women can be controlled by the men in their lives. Women's feelings are totally to do with what men decide to do with them. And yeah, men bring no value unless they are suicidal, essentially.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. Especially because we, like, do have an example of a self-preservationist in Matt.
Yeah, just like,
and Matt is constantly, as we have also said, feminized by the text.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, in another extremely toxic plot, Lan goes off to, is it Myrelle?
Yeah, Myrelle, however you say it.
And has, like, a really disgusting post-Moiraine fling with this woman.
Which, like, we don't know how consensual.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, like, it doesn't seem very consensual to me on, like, Lan's behalf, you know?
Yeah, so great. Love it.
And then he goes off and marries Nynaeve.
And meanwhile, Rand is like, oh dang, this is like a whole ass explosion. Everyone's watching us.
How embarrassing.
He's like, ugh. Now Robin might know that I'm coming, which is like the exact opposite of what I wanted. And he's like, Rand, you're such a dummy. Allow yourself to mourn for Moiraine. So he goes into, like, a shed or something and takes out Moiraine's letter and reads it, which is where he finds out that she has known about this future and has been planning for it since she went to Ruidaean. And she gives him some advice, including to not trust any woman who is currently an Aes Sedai. Notably, she says Alviren and Varen are your... either Alviren or Varen, and I get that that's supposed to be like a spectrum of here's the Aes Sedai you're most familiar with and probably most inclined to trust besides me, as opposed to Alviren, one you don't know at all, and I've just had a
creepy letter
from. But they are also, notably, spoiler alert, both Black Aja. Mm-hmm. And although we also know that Varen is ultimately working for the good guys, it's just sort of like a fun little nugget of foreshadowing there. She also is like, okay, I get it about Jason. I get why you had to do it.
I was like, Jason?
Yeah.
Jason Bourne?
Jason Bourne. She's like, I get it about Natael, but please be careful. Which is sad because it is a moment that could have been foreshadowing, but, like, Asmodean's life was cut off by the end of this book.
Gone before his time.
Like, again, Asmodean, unlike literally any of the other Forsaken, would have been so interesting to have around for a while because... he could potentially have been the first Forsaken character that we liked. Yeah. Or trusted at all, and maybe then betrayed Rand, or maybe didn't, you know?
Yeah. It just, like, he actually had, like, a unique perspective to offer the story, and Robert Jordan is like, don't need him. Instead, I need 40,000 different women who all work for the White Tower. It's like, I don't need all of those.
Bruh.
You can just keep Asmodine around for a few more books.
I feel like he took out Asmodine so he could put in Mazrim Tem, which is such a, like, bad trade.
Yeah. Like, bring me back Asmodine.
Bring me back Asmodine. Have Asmodine start the Black Tower. Yeah. He would be less obviously bad than Mazrim Tem.
I know. Mazrim Tem comes on screen, like, literally just, like, dripping grease and filth.
He's, like, twirling his mustaches.
Yeah. Like, he's literally got a maiden tied to a train track.
He's like, ignore the woman I've tied to the train track behind me and the bank I'm currently robbing.
And Rand's like, sounds reasonable.
I'm fine. And Rand's like, would you care to educate the populace?
It's like the most upsetting sequence in the whole world.
We'll get there.
Would you care to educate the populace?
It makes me so angry.
It would be so funny if Asmodine was in charge of the Black Tower.
I know, it would be funny. And she's like, and deliver this letter to Tom.
My lover.
Which he will. So Rand reads this letter, is like, great, even more for me to feel guilty and upset about. blah, blah, blah. I hate when women's deaths inconvenience me in this way.
Okay, but that's, like, literally what he says.
I know. And then, Sulin walks in and does her whole, starts breaking spears, because Rand did not invite the maidens on this raid. And she's like, you can't change me. This is what I am. I am a soldier, the same as any man. And to treat me like anything else is a huge disrespect. And he's like, fine, I won't do it anymore, but it'll just be bad for me.
She's like, I don't give a shit.
She's like, I don't give a shit. And we, the readers, are like, it is totally your choice how you are affected by things.
Yeah, like, I get it. Like, if something upsets you, like, you would probably have to put in work before it will just stop upsetting you, but you could also choose to put in that work and, like, work through your feelings on your own fucking time.
Yeah, Rand, therapy is an option.
Yeah, also, therapy is a treatment plan. It is not just talking about your feelings over and over again.
Yeah.
For 18,000 pages. Like, you need to do some work.
Yeah, we're just stuck in this cycle of Rand being like, but it upsets me so much when women die. And women being like, that's not my problem because I'm not that person in your life.
Yeah.
I'm not here to help you work through that.
Yeah.
I am literally just a soldier in your army.
Yeah.
Sulin's like, I don't have time to mom you. Despite how fucking unbelievably mad you get when women like me do mom you.
Yeah.
Like, you take it, you get it one way or another, bub.
Yeah.
Like, come on. So anyway, Rand walks out of the shed. He's like, fine, maidens get to come. All the other maidens who are outside are like, oh, sweet.
Yeehaw.
And Matt standing there lounging and grinning is like, are we doing this or what?
Yeah.
And Rand's like, why are you fucking smiling? And Matt's like, what do you want me to do? Cry?
It's like, I'm alive.
What are you smiling about? What do you want me to cry?
Yeah.
I was like, does Matt ever cry in the narrative? I can't remember a time when.
I don't know. I feel like he's mostly just puking or laughing.
He's mostly just puking or falling or punching things. The only time I remember him being close to tears is after Tylan rapes him, which is upsetting, but, like, I don't know. Okay. I'm always fascinated by how much male characters, especially written by men, cry, because I feel like men are like, my male characters can't cry.
Yeah.
Because I, a man in America, can't cry.
I don't even have tear ducts. I'm like,
have tear ducts. I'm like, let men cry. It's fine.
Crying is so nice.
It's also an instinctive reaction to pain.
Yeah.
And anger and a lot of other things.
Crying is so good. I love crying.
Yeah, it also just adds to, like, Robert Jordan's whole torture porn fetish, which is that he is constantly having women getting beaten up or spanked or whatever, and they're always in tears about it.
Yeah.
Whereas Matt and Perrin are literally never allowed to cry on screen.
I think Perrin would die if he cried.
I think.
Oh my god, I just read this scene in the Shadow.
Oh wait, he did cry on Fail.
Oh, that's right. After his whole family was murdered. Robert Jordan has, like, a bar. Like, if you've reached X number of family members brutally murdered, you can cry one time.
Yeah, there's, like, a whole list. All your family is dead.
Yeah.
You can get to cry one time. Yeah. And he's like, Matt, you don't get to cry despite being sexually assaulted.
No.
That's not, quote unquote, good enough to warrant tears.
Your whole extended family has to be slaughtered.
Yep.
And then you can cry once.
And only on a woman.
Only on a woman's titties.
Anyway, so they're like, okie dokie, let's get this show on the road. Rand brings Matt and Asmodean and Avienda with him to the courtyard where they're taking off from, I guess. He's like, goddamn, everyone in Kyrian knows we're going.
Stupid.
What even is the point? But he creates this portal, his skimming portal, because traveling is still not yet introduced into this narrative. It, like, always boggles my mind how long it takes traveling to get there. Because it's, like, so vital and necessary. And I'm like, some characters don't have it till, like, book 11. And it's like, what? How are we living like this?
Just not teleporting, baby.
Anyway, he makes this big platform. Everyone gets on it, including most, of the ale. Some of the ale. And they start traveling toward Camelin. Someone falls off halfway through. And Rand's like, God, I hope they, have a heart attack before they starve to death. And I'm like, they're ale. They've got to have, like, 16 knives on them. I think if they choose to end it, they can end it.
Yeah.
Anyway, they managed to skim to Camelin, literally to directly the spot where Rand and then later Matt broke into the palace by climbing that wall, the garden wall. As they get there, Rand is like, oh my god, what are my feelings? Women, Elaine, Avienda, men, who knows? But he opens the gateway, and all the ale jump out. Rand goes last because he asked to, or the platform will disappear or whatever. And sort of things happen very quickly. It's like the inner wall of the palace sort of like explodes outward, and a bunch of Trollocs come out, and then also a bunch of lightning comes down from the sky very quickly. So Rand sort of channels to protect himself, but is too late when he comes to, I guess. He, like, looks around and is like, oh, they weren't just targeting me. Matt is dead, Asmodean is dead, and Avienda is dead. And, of course, we would be remiss not to note that their bodies are preserved on various levels depending on the author's need to make them accessible, I guess. Asmodean gets 0 dignity in death in terms of his body and what happens to it because he was a bad guy.
Yeah, it's like all charred and...
Matt is not a sexualized figure to the protagonist, so he is not like perfect and beautiful as the day, as the moment of post-coital bliss or whatever, as Avienda is.
Yeah.
But he's also one of the good guys, so, you know, his body's intact.
Yeah, he's just knocked out of his boots and smoking a little.
Yeah, which I just think is an interesting thing to track, especially because Brandon Sanderson, who will take over the series later, is a big proponent of verisimilitude in battle scenes, and good guys not necessarily having perfectly preserved bodies after death. He, like, is like, people get beheaded, and that just happens sometimes. It's a pretty quick death, all things considered.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes our good guys get parted with their heads.
Yeah.
But, you know,
yeah,
it's a fantasy trope thing.
Avienda is, like, laid out like Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
With her
like,
beautiful red hair.
Or just her eyes are open and staring. That's how I know she's dead. And also she's cold. And I'm like, shut up. Rand then is like, Robin!
Yeah.
And goes to chase after Robin. He opens a gateway. As usual in these sequences, he doesn't really know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so he just sort of does it.
Yeah.
And I guess we will figure out pretty quickly later on that he's actually entered Teleron Riyadh, but until then it's a little bit unclear. So he is now on the hunt for Robin. Okay, and that chapter doesn't technically end. We then go over to Nynaeve, but we'll talk about that next week. Lump it in with Nynaeve joining the climax, I guess.
Which is, like, I don't know if I really... Like, the first time I was reading this book, I was like, yeah, we're going. And, like, it's kind of very odd at the end that it's, like, Rand and Nynaeve end up in the same place.
It is interesting.
It's just, like, is not what I would have expected reading this, like, rereading this book again. I'm like, these aren't the characters who would come together in the end.
Yeah, we so rarely get to see, I mean, any of our main protagonists fighting together in the same, like, space. And notably, Rand and Nynaeve are still separated for most of it, although they are fighting the same person, which is interesting, but Rand is largely unaware of Nynaeve. But yeah, this series goes so far out of its way to, like, keep its protagonists in their own separate battlefields that it is very odd that suddenly they're intersecting here.
They're on top of each other. But, I mean, Nynaeve's the one I would want in battle with me. Nynaeve is, like, the most powerful person in the whole world.
She can't even channel, technically, in Teleron Riyadh, and she figures out how to get that channeling power.
Yeah.
She doesn't use Moghedien.
She's just like, yeehaw, it's me, the most powerful woman in the world.
And Robin's like, what the?
It's like, I did not count on this.
And Nynaeve's like, I've kicked 3 Forsaken asses in the last 2 books alone.
Yeah.
Moghedien's twice.
Yeah.
Obviously. But anyway, we'll get to that in a little more depth next time, since it's mostly action plus epilogue. But, yeah, we're, like, at the end of Fires of Heaven.
We're getting there, yeah. It kind of snuck up on me a little.
I know, it all goes very quickly once you get to that battle in Kyrian.
Kyrian.
Kyrian. But, anything you want to add?
Nope. Just, please check us out on Patreon if you are enjoying the podcast. Supporting us on Patreon is a really great way to make sure that the podcast continues. That's how we do stuff like pay for our hosting fees on Libsyn and buy equipment and stuff like that. Plus you get access to a lot of really great bonus content, like Emily's aforementioned blogs, and our other podcast and our blooper reels and stuff like that. So pretty good bargain if I may say so myself.
Indeed. Thank you to Glenna McKenzie for our theme song. Thank you for listening. And do you have a sign-off?
I actually have a listener-submitted sign-off that we've been sitting on for a few weeks, so I'm really sorry, Robbie. But we're getting to it now. And we actually is also on theme because it's about Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, technically it's about Legend of Korra, but whatever. So Robbie writes, my sister and I have recently started rewatching Legend of Korra on Netflix, and my love for General Iroh, the grandson of Zuko, and the love of my life is rather enthusiastic. I forget that they rename a character.
I know it, and it's actually the same voice actor too, Dante
like,
Bosco, and you're like, what's happening?
While I was cooking dinner for the parents this week, my sister and I were FaceTiming, talking very passionately about the show. That is so adorable. In my excitement, I very loudly exclaimed my favorite EHR expression, saying, God, I want General Iroh to step on me. My parents, who had entered the kitchen without warning, stood frozen in confusion and concern as I tried to rapid-fire explain that I didn't actually want someone to step on me, and that, in fact, I was not in love with a cartoon character. To their credit, they said they were very supportive of me, which made this parental exchange one for the history books trauma section.
We support you.
I cannot even begin imagining how to describe to my parents the phrase, I want them to step on me.
I know, I can't. It's too many layers of, like, nuance and sexual nuance.
Yeah. That they would just be like, especially my dad, he'd be like,
Bill would,
Zoom.
I mean, imagine my parents.
Chris would be like, wait, what?
I mean, I would literally never bring up sex in front of my parents. Ever. Literally ever. The notion horrifies me deep into my bones.
Yeah, kind of same. Anyway.
You're very brave,
Step
Robbie.
on me. Yeah, you are very brave.
Step on me, General Iroh.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.